really excited to introduce our first speaker today. He's the chairman, president, CEO of Ooma. You've seen their commercials. They're fantastic. Publicly traded company, New York Stock Exchange traded company. He's also the board chair at Rambus. He's on the board at Avalanche Technologies. He's been on the board at InvenSense and a group of others. So with that, I'd like to welcome Eric Stang to the group.
I need to tell a quick story, just for fun, really. I got up this morning and told my wife I was coming up here to give a speech. Kind of excited about it. It's called Masterminds. Didn't tell her what it's about. And she turned, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "You're not going to give a speech again on something you know absolutely nothing about, are you?" And I had a really good retort to that. I said, "Huh?" And she said, "Well, you do that all the time." So anyway, here I am, with lots of confidence now in what I'm about to talk about. But anyway, I want to talk about raising capital here quickly. You know, in my mind, young companies don't really fail. They just run out of money. And so this is why this is an important topic. How do you keep yourself funded so you can do what you want to do? There's about 7 or 8 things I want to talk about in that regard. The first is, it starts with you. It's probably a easily expected statement, but when you go to pitch your company and talk about your idea, you need to realize you're also presenting yourself and what you're about. You should be prepared to answer questions like, how did you get into this? Why do you want to do it? What are you seeking out of this? It's not just about your idea when you go to talk. Harvard Business School did a review years ago about what can determine the best success for making a VC meeting go well. And top of the list actually was having a referral into the VC to introduce you before you get there. You're instantly someone they can trust, they can get to know. You also need to think about when you're pitching and talking your story, you know, they're also thinking about, is this someone who can scale? Is this someone who can build a team? Is this someone who listens? Is this someone who's strategic? I don't know quite how you get all that across in a 1-hour pitch, but I found one thing that's been really helpful is instead of just talking, make it a conversation. Try to make it a two-way conversation. Build together to get the idea across, and that can help a lot. Second thing I want to talk about is sales. Oh, and did I mention sales? Congratulations, you're all salesmen. You got to sell your company to investors, you got to sell it to partners, to employees, to customers. It's a sales job. I look back for this presentation actually at what we did at Ooma. We went public in 2015. In the 5 years before we went public, I have a database. I talked to 162 different VC and private equity firms. And a lot of those were multiple meetings. It was selling all the time. Now, we weren't in the sexiest of industries, although we were doing something really cool in our industry. We got some great term sheets, built the company, it all worked, but it's hard, and you got to be prepared for that. We even had a couple situations where with really great VCs, folks I respect a lot, we went months into it, did the diligence, even agreed on valuation, term sheet, basically design, and we just didn't get over the finish line. So it's never done until it's done either. So be prepared to sell. You know, if you don't like sales, it's the wrong job for you. And if you do like sales, but you don't think you're that good at it, it's a learnable skill. Go make the effort, go learn it. And you know, there's a lot you could talk about how to do it well, but there's 2 things I always try to keep in mind when I'm talking to a potential investor. One is to make sure I ask questions. It's so easy to go in and want to tell your story, tell them all about what you got. Ask questions. You need to find out what they care about. You can't sell well if you don't know what the person you're selling to cares about, and you can tell your story to their needs. And the other is to, the best you can, it's a first meeting usually, cultivate a relationship. Do what you can to start to find connections with that individual. So it can be beyond just this great idea you're throwing on their desk. So think about sales because you're a salesman. Next one is prioritize the who. It's really easy to get focused on the term sheet, the terms of the term sheet, the valuation, really. But I would submit most important is who you get to invest in you. It's funny, I look back at that 162 that we went out to, and one of them I went out to, went in all happy, excited to tell the story, spent 50 minutes going through it, and the last 10 minutes the guy says to me, "Oh, by the way, we invested in XYZ company who happened to be the big competitor that we were going to go up against, and even though they've gone public, by the way, I'm still on their board." you know, I wish he told me at the start of the meeting, but really it was my fault. I didn't do my diligence on that VC. And if you're going to go out and go to these meetings, you've got to diligence them before you go in. A lot of VCs will talk to you. They're interested in what you're doing. They want to make connections, but maybe they just made 2 big investments. They're not going to make anything new soon. Or maybe they don't have anything going on in your industry and aren't interested in it. Or maybe they've got to raise their next fund before they've got more capital. They're tapped out. You need to know those things so you just don't waste your time when you're going through this process. And then after that, I really think picking the right investors makes a big difference, because every company, as you're building it, is going to stumble sometime. And when it stumbles, it's going to take trust to get you through it. And so you need to find folks to work with that you can trust. You need to cultivate and build that trust, especially after they join your board and you start to go forward. It helps too if the partner has enough sway, because I think you probably know a partner can love what you're doing in your business, but if the whole partnership doesn't vote for it, it doesn't happen. That's how those 2 ones that I told you about earlier didn't get over the finish line. I find it's helpful too if you can bring a couple investors into your company, because it gives you a little bit more latitude to build those relationships. Also find as you get bigger, it can be very helpful to have an independent third-party board member who you really trust and can bridge between you and the venture capitalist investors on your board. Because while your interests are very aligned, when it comes time to the next round of valuation, your interests don't exactly align, and you don't want to break down trust or lose your relationship through that process. A third-party board member can help a lot to get through that. Keep it simple. You probably all heard these statistics, but VCs will look at 100 or 200, maybe 300 deals before they'll do 1 or 2 investments. Actually, Silicon Valley Bank told me a while back there are 14,000 venture-backed tech and life science companies in the United States, 7,000 of which have taken $2 million or more in investment. A little bit of a just interesting fact. VCs are busy. They've got a lot going on. They're not going to sit there and tease out the gem of the idea that you're trying to tell them. You got to come in and really be able to explain it clearly right at the go. In fact, that same Harvard Business School study said that if you don't get across what you needed across in the first 15 minutes of your meeting, you're probably not going to have a good meeting. You've got to get that out really out of the gate. And what that means for me, I struggle with this because I'm pretty detail-oriented. I think it's a strength, actually, when you're trying to execute in the company. But, you've got this great idea. You want to say, oh, and it can do this too. And, we can take the product also to here. And we also could serve that market. And really hold yourself back from that. Get to the gem of your idea and communicate that really well. The other thing I found that really helps me in these situations is there's an outside firm or two that I've worked with. Get professional help on crafting your presentation. It'll look better, but really the process of crafting it with that professional help will force you to think it through one more time and really get it clear in your mind. Just a couple little tidbits to get through that step. Manage timing and proof points. Past angel and A round is still, high fives all around. You finally got money. You can pursue your great idea. All looks good. You get to the C round, and presumably by that point you've got products or maybe customers or something going on that's starting to demonstrate that you can do what you set out to do. But that one in the middle, the B round, I've had it called so many times the bullshit round because you got to bullshit your way through it. And how do you do that? Well, I think it all comes down to making sure you plan your rounds, managing your timing and your proof points, your milestones, if you will. Whenever you take a round of money, you got to think about where that's going to get you and what that next milestone is going to be that you can achieve with that money. Whether it's getting a product designed, getting it built, getting a first customer, whatever have you, and make sure you take out enough money all the way to get there. Plus, maybe 3 months more, because then you need time to go raise once you've achieved it. And it's easy to make this mistake. A good friend of mine, I have so much respect for him because he started a company 6-7 years ago. His last round just recently was $100 million. They're doing great. Actually, I think I mentioned the company is Bill.com. But back in 2009, they had 26 people in that company. He's the founder. And he cut it to 14 people. Why? Because he only had 6 months left of money, and he knew he wasn't going to be able to get where he needed to get to and raise on his terms in the time he had. He extended his runway from 6 months to 12, still got done what he was planning to get done with 26 people somehow, and raised money effectively and kept that company going. He was managing his timing from stage to stage so he could get to his next proof point. Really important so you don't get caught. Always choose clean. What I'm referring to here is term sheets. It's really easy to focus on valuation in a term sheet, but in my experience, you've got to negotiate the whole term sheet and pay attention to all the elements in it. You know, I'll give you two quick reasons why. One is if you stumble, if you have any kind of a down round, those onerous terms in your term sheet are going to come back and take that out of your pocket, common. And that's, you know, no one expects to be there, but it happens. Two of the companies I've been involved with have gone through recaps. I mean, it's worth paying attention to even things you don't think are going to happen. And then secondly, and this particularly applies when things change from round to round, but you don't want to end up where your second or third round investors have different incentives from your first round investors. You know, your third round investors might want to sell the company because they're going to make a good return on it, whereas your first round is going to make nothing. It's really helpful if you have simple terms and they're carried through every term sheet. Now, I would recommend highly, Dennis DeBrock's going to speak. You and I have been good friends for a long time, the fantastic firm, Fenwick. But get yourself a really good lawyer to help you through all your term sheet stuff. And I know for me, there's three big things I focus on outside evaluation. One is preferences, which speak to what the VC is going to get before Common can get anything. 1x non-participating is obviously, I think, where you want to end up. If it's more than 1x, it means they're going to get more money back than they put in before you can see anything. If it's participating, it means after they get what they get back, they're also going to participate in the rest. So you can imagine 2x participating preferences can make a big difference to what happens. Second area I look at is anti-dilution provisions. That's pretty complex. I never fully understood quite how those formulas work, but you know, about the best you can do is a broad-based weighted average anti-dilution, which means it takes into account all the investment that's gone into the company when a down round happens. If you're on the other end of the spectrum with something called full ratchet, you do a down round in price, and previous rounds will get completely repriced to that new price point, and that can also just kill you in Common. And then the last thing I try to look at is, I just call it other protective provisions. And I won't go too much detail here, but it's good to consider that even though voting-wise, there might be certain levels of control possible to the different owners of the company, protective provisions can change that and can give more control to some parties in terms of voting rights, how dividends work, things like that. So your lawyer will talk you all through that, but gosh, if there's one message here, it's don't just focus on valuation. Look at the whole term sheet, and beyond that, look at the venture firm or the investor that you're going to be working with, first and foremost. Lastly, just some quick thoughts on angels. I've had a couple experiences in this area that I thought were kind of interesting. We bought a business at Ooma 3-4 years ago. Really nice guy came to work for me. He had funded his business with angel money, had not been able to get to the point where he could get revenue, had no more money to get into, came on board. We had a big employee retention earnout, really for him and the people. He ended up paying everything we gave him the next 2 years back to his angels because he felt bad that they had lost money. And it really hurt him. A friend of mine has done several companies, all founded first with angels, and he has a very simple philosophy. He never asks angels for money. He talks about his company, he talks about what he's doing. If they ask him and show interest, then he follows up and takes it there. You do need to think about what's going to happen with these angels if things don't work out. Beyond that, you have to recognize too that a lot of angels will sit back and just really be patient, but there's always one that just wants to know everything all the time. So there's a real communication burden that comes with it. And the one that's bitten me, and in 2 of the last 3 times that I've tried to take a company public, it's bitten me. You know, the bankers and the accountants won't let you go forward until your cap table is absolutely perfectly understood. And you find out you don't have good records, and there's 50 angels from 6 years ago, and they all think they own something different than what you think they own. Oh, I got warrants because I did some work for the company back here on that. Well, we have no record of that. And then in comes an email that they share, and somebody did something, and it's a mess, and it's just a mess you don't want to deal with. So I really recommend being very careful about what you do with your angels and tracking it very well in your cap table, so so you don't get caught by it. So hopefully some words of wisdom on raising money, and you know, I think a lot of what I talked about resonates with what Sway took us through. So thank you for the chance to come speak.
Eric, thanks so much, and thank you. If you could stay there for a second.
Sure.
If you wouldn't mind,
No,
because
happy to.
in some of our lead up to getting you to do this, you said a lot more stuff. You just said a lot more stuff, and so I figured I'd ask you a couple questions.
But I did.
Yeah. So one of the things you said that was interesting was about, as you afford board seats, be sure that board member actually is high value, and that's a fine line. And maybe spend just a minute or two on that topic, if you would.
Yeah. We were able to have several of our investors at Ooma take board observer roles. And that is a very nice way to stay very connected, but yet not fully bring them onto the board. We've also tried to build our board with a different range of skills so that we get help in the different areas we need. And try to find, particularly VC, when it comes to VCs, investors who have a lot of sway in their firms, so that they can, you know, carry you through the tougher times. I'm on the board of a company right now where two of the firms, there's more than three. Two of the bigger investors, the venture partner who invested in both cases left the firm. And that really leaves you stuck in some respects. One of them went to another firm and picked up the investment from that firm, which is terrific. But I don't remember what I said to you, but that's what comes to mind.
It was just a fine line. The other thing that I thought was rather something that could actually get by somebody is the power of a strong presentation. You mentioned it a bit about you've got 15 minutes to kind of get that VC interested, but maybe a bit more on that would be helpful for the team here.
Yeah. It's funny. I've done so many presentations to investors where I can see I'm confusing them. Because I'm talking too fast. I'm talking about a new space that they don't have any familiarity with, really. And I'm trying to not only tell them about the space, but tell them about my great idea in the space. Getting a powerful 15 slides together that just tell the story clearly, slide to slide, with the flows and the transitions, practicing it, getting someone, frankly, a professional working on it with you can make a world of difference. I probably worked on my presentation at Ooma when we were private. I must have changed it 20 times. I mean, I just kept modifying it and trying to make it clearer. And you know, like I said, if you don't resonate in the first 15 minutes and the gem of the idea doesn't come through, you're not going to get there.
Eric, thanks so much.
Thank
Really
you, everybody.
appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.